Hi guys, so this is a video I've never done before, but I've basically been catching up on Nicole's booktube channel, which is a beautiful chaos of books, and I'll link it down below. And I was watching her like monthly reading wrap-ups. I'm just absolutely binge watching her videos at the moment. But yeah, I decided I wanted to do one too, and I'm excited to share with you what I've read, and it's something that I've never done before, but if you guys like it, I would quite enjoy doing it in the future every month. So first up is Beautiful Broken Things by Sarah Barnard. I think I will give this 5 stars. I haven't put it on my Goodreads yet because I'm so behind on it, but basically a lot of YA novels, like YA contemporary novels, are all about kind of teenage romance, and this one was all about teenage friendship. There were 2 friends, Caddy and Rosie, I think. Yeah, Caddy and Rosie, and they've been friends since they were at primary school, and Caddy goes to a really posh private school and Rosie goes to a normal secondary, but they've kind of remained inseparable until Rosie makes a new friend called Suzanne, who's a bit rough around the edges. Her history is quite dubious, and Caddy feels kind of undermined and insecure. And I think we've all been there when your best friend finds a new best friend and all of a sudden everything's a bit out of kilter. And it was just such a refreshing read because, as I said, I've not really read very many YA books that are focusing on female friendships, and I think it was an important read. There was lots of discussions about mental health in there that I think were really key. And then I've got 2 non-fiction reads this month, so I will pop them together. The first up is Stand Tall Little Girl, Facing Up to Anorexia by Hope Virgo. I found this really tough to read because I'm at a time where I'm trying to be really body positive, but I weigh more than I ever have done before in my life, and in the past I've struggled with not an eating disorder but disordered eating, and I'm finding it quite hard at the moment not to slip back into old habits. And obviously this, although Hope has made it like as untriggering as it can be, she doesn't mention any figures, any calorie numbers, anything like that. I still found it quite triggering and quite a tough read, but having said that, it was very good. I think I'll give it 4 stars just because I wouldn't give it 5 just because I struggled with it and I had to kind of keep forcing myself to read it to finish it. But I think it's an important book. It talks about Hope's struggles as a teen with anorexia, but I think part of the strength comes in the excerpts from Hope's mum, because there's always these questions about how can a parent let their teen get to the point where they're emaciated and they're going to hospital because of their eating disorder, and Hope's mum kind of delves into that. And I think, yeah, it's something that would be a great read for anybody that has a family member or a friend struggling with an eating disorder. And yeah, as I said, this is the other non-fiction read. Both of these are from Trigger Pub, which is a kind of small mental health based book publishers, and they sent me these 2 books which I've not been asked to talk about on YouTube or anything. It's not sponsored, but Sex, Suicide and Serotonin by Debbie Hampton is something that I will be giving 5 stars because I just couldn't put it down. It's basically Debbie tried to commit suicide when she was in her early 40s, and she basically ended up brain damaged from it. I think she went into a coma, and when she woke up she took a kind of concoction of drugs and alcohol, and I had no idea that that could cause you brain damage, which sounds really silly, but anything that I've seen about somebody committing suicide using drugs, they usually have their stomach pumped if they survive and kind of merrily go on their way. But the doctors didn't know what kind of combination of pills she had taken. They couldn't just pump her stomach, and yeah, she ended up not being able to talk or kind of walk or eat properly or anything like that. She'd kind of forgotten, she had a lot of memory loss anyway, but she'd also forgotten kind of basic functions of how to write. Her muscle memories were all kind of gone, and it's all about how Debbie repieces her life and gets things back together, which it was so interesting. I learned so much about the brain that I didn't know. Debbie went through all kind of normal types of therapy that you would go through if you had brain damage, but then she also tried out a whole load of alternative therapies and did yoga, and she basically talks about how each one impacted her and how each helped her. So next up is The Power by Naomi Alderman, which I've heard so much hype about and how amazing it is, but I think it's something that I will be giving a 3-star, because basically the kind of premise of the book is that all of a sudden women have developed these skeins across their collarbones which basically give them some kind of electric energy, so they can shock people, and if you know how to use it well, you can touch somebody and stop their heart or mess with their brain waves, or yeah, you can use brute force to touch them and just zap them. And it's all about how then the tables are turned so that women are more powerful and men fear walking home alone. And I felt disappointed in that I was hoping it to be this really like uplifting novel about like the like innate power of women, how they'd use it for good, and it wasn't. It was kind of this, it was set as though it was a history, and it was all about how women basically like just abused men, and just everything was completely swapped, and how women could be as malicious as men too. It was set in this weird way where Naomi Alderman uses a pseudonym inside the book that's a man's name. I think it's like Neil Adams something. And I just found it just didn't really live up to the hype at all. There were bits that I kind of glossed over where I just wanted the book to move a bit more quickly. It's written from a kind of variety of narratives, and I'm really glad I read it because it's something that it was different and it was intriguing, but I can kind of see why it was shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction but didn't win. It's just, yeah, it's different. It's a sci-fi feminist novel. I was excited that it was recommended by Margaret Atwood, but yeah, it just didn't really hit the spot for me. And then we have Fierce by Gin Phillips, which is a adult thriller book. This was something that I was sent to do an Instagram read along, so the idea was that you read it all in one sitting, and it's kind of been described as a bit similar to Emma Donoghue's Room. So yeah, Fierce I would give 4 stars because I think it was a good book, but for a thriller it didn't really come to a head. There was so many like little points of stress and tension, but there was no massive twist that I was expecting. But yeah, it was still a good read. And then, almost finally, is Homefire, which I've got a whole post about because this was the best book that I've read in so long, like so long. It was just incredible. It's all about a Muslim family living in London that suffer due to Islamophobia, both in London and the US. The father of the family was a jihadi, and they're all kind of trying to escape from this past that keeps coming back. And it's something that I would definitely recommend, and I'll leave a link to the video down below if I've got it up already, which I probably won't have. And then finally, it's the only book I've read on my Kindle this month. It's Germinal by Emile Zola. This was a really long book and it just felt like it dragged on forever. I'll probably give it 2 or 3 stars just because it wasn't really for me. As I said, it just felt like it went on and on and on and nothing really happened. It was one of those classics where you were like, I can see why it's a classic and I can see why it's important, but it doesn't mean that I really like it. It was all about a miners' strike in France and how these men basically weren't being paid enough to live, so they were like, fine, I won't work. If I'm not being paid enough to put food on my table, what's the point? And they led this massive strike, and it goes on and on and on, and it all comes to a head, and the strike doesn't really work, and it's all about kind of this horrible state that miners in France were left in and their families were. And it was really interesting to see this kind of glimpse of history that I'd have no idea about. I've learnt quite a lot about French history, but not to do with this kind of mining struggle that they had. Yeah, and I think it was an important book and I'm glad that I read it, but I didn't enjoy it that much. So sorry to end on such a shit note, but there's that. Yeah, let me know what you read this month, because I really want some more inspo of books to buy and books to read and which ones to pick up off my shelf, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.